Whoa, what was the matter with that shot? That was about a foot low of the mark. Let's take a look at that again in slow motion. We see the problem is the arrow. It isn't even flying true. That arrow may look straight, but it is not matched to the bow, which is a problem for bow hunters. You have to know your equipment. You also have to know some bow hunting basics. We're going to talk about that right now, so stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night time for Michigan Outdoors. From opening day of bow season, 1984. I'm sitting in a tree stand in the morning, a little bit chilly. I'm at the Lost Arrow Lodge near Gladwin on the edge of a woods, a rye field behind me. I'm looking towards the woods where the deer are most likely to come from. There's a slight frost on the ground. Like I said, I'm chilly. I haven't drawn my bow since the day before, and after sitting in the blind for an hour, my first shot is going to be the one that counts. I sit, I wait, I wonder if I'm going to be as accurate this morning from this tree as I had been the past week during practice. Now, every bow hunter, every morning, wonders the same thing. And there's the deer. It's a button buck. Not one I'm interested in putting on the venison pole, assuming I could. Now, what's the key to successful bow hunting? Well, Avery Sterling, the owner of Lost Arrow, has some suggestions for bow hunters, things they can be doing right now.
Well, basically, the hunter has to start pulling his bow a tremendous amount. The more he pulls his bow, the steadier he's going to be when he has deer come in. He has to prep to make sure he has the proper equipment, his camouflage. If he's going to hunt from the ground, in a cover blind, it's not too bad. But if he's going to hunt from a tree, then he should be practicing from a ladder, because his angle and his optic perspective on the shot is going to be much different than it is from the ground.
Here we are, the last week in September. Is it too late for a bow hunter to get ready for the season?
I think if you start now, he's still got plenty of time to get ready. If he goes out and shoots 50, 60 arrows a night, and then take a break and shoot a little bit more, and each night increase, and if he can be shooting in a paper plate, he's going to have a good chance of killing his deer, because he's got about a 12 by 12 target to shoot at in the vital areas.
Avery Sterling has seen lots of hunters hit and miss at Lost Arrow, and there are a variety of reasons why. Sometimes it's the equipment, sometimes it's the technique. Now here's our bow hunting camp last year at Houghton Lake. We're flinging a few arrows late one morning just for practice, and it gives us a chance to look at some different equipment and different shooting styles. First, let's look at a mechanized Bob Garner compound bow with a bow scope and a release aid. Now, he didn't release that arrow with his fingers. The release aid in his hand holds the bowstring, and Bob pulls the trigger on the release. Release aids give an unfair advantage in tournament archery against the shooters who release the strings with their fingers, but release aids aren't foolproof. Now, here you can see Bob Brockwell's finger tabs aren't foolproof either. He's practicing with his hunting gloves on. There are a few problems. Now we go over the shoulder with Bob Brockwell. Watch his release. Oops, there go the finger tabs again. Now that's a problem that could cause a bad arrow release, but that can be straightened out easily. Now watch closely the way the bow moves to the right as Bob releases the bowstring. The important thing in accurate shooting is holding the bow steady until the arrow clears the arrow rest on the bow. Now it looks like Bob moves slightly away from the arrow with the bow, so it really doesn't affect its flight. But everybody's slow motion style shows up differently depending on how they grip the bow and what muscles they're using in drawing and holding the bow back. Watching my release, it doesn't look too bad either, but with the small handle on my recurve, I tend to let the bow twist slightly after the arrow clears the bow. And as long as I hold it and release it that way consistently, I can maintain my accuracy. It's holding the bow steady for that split second after the string is released that matters. And here are our arrows. Fortunately, I'm pulling one from the paper cup we were aiming at, and I have one arrow about 3 inches wide, but that's good enough at 20 yards. What about the rest of those arrows? Well, the guy who has taught me archery basics is showing the camera the most important muscles right now, his back. This is Phil Grable, professional archer, Pope & Young member, designer and manufacturer of the bow he's shooting and the one I shoot. Now see his release? That bow is steady, but not because of his arms. That bow stays rock solid to launch the arrow accurately because of Phil's use of his back muscles. Take a look at his back before he draws the bow. Now his muscles are relaxed right there. Now he'll try drawing it just with his arms, not using his back at first. And watch the way, this is not the way to do it.
Arms. So then these muscles are like that. Okay, now you tightened? Okay, now squeezing the back. Okay.
Now that his back muscles are tight, he relaxes only his fingers around the string. Back muscles remain tight after the shot. Now, an archer's eye is extremely important if he uses pin-type sights, which most shooters use. Anchoring under the chin, Phil lines up the sight pin, he's using the top pin right there, with the bowstring. And at full draw, his eye, the bowstring, his sight pin, and his target are all in line. That's the first step in accuracy. The second step is obvious, holding that line long enough to release the bowstring from your fingers, maintaining the sight picture until the arrow clears the arrow rest. If you've done it all properly, you'll hit where you've aimed. But there's one more factor. It's your equipment. Dave Schroeder from Anderson Archery is demonstrating arrow flight here with an arrow that is matched to the bow. Now see how the arrow flies true. It flies straight, it holds its shape, and you can even see it spiral towards the target. Not all arrows do that, especially if your arrow is not stiff enough, if it doesn't have enough spline, as it's called, for the speed of your bow. Whoa, way off course. Now let's take a look at that. It wasn't the release, it was a mismatched arrow buckling up in flight. You might not see the problem with your naked eye, but the slow motion shows the distorted arrow. So you have to match your arrows to your bow. You have to work on your release, squeeze your back, and as you sit in your blind, keep these basics in mind. That's half of bow hunting. The other half, well, that's the deer. Some say they're unpredictable. I don't really think so. Can they duck arrows? Well, maybe. But all that can be explained when we look at white-tailed deer behavior. That's next week's subject on Michigan Outdoors. Tell you got to have your equipment in good shape. One thing you can do this weekend, unless maybe you want to check out the fishing scene. We have some action all over the state. Lindquist up in Marquette says we have lake trout off of the piers. Not too many people fishing off the piers, though. The Dead River, Chocolate River have lots of salmon. Walleye are being caught at Lake Independence from shore. He says it's great fishing. Leaf drop, it's imminent, anytime. Good news for hunters. Perch are good over at Sault Ste. Marie, according to the people at Riverview. Ludington Sports at Escanaba says the pike fishing is tremendous. Perch has been kind of so-so, but the salmon have started moving into the rivers. Down at Glenn's Bait here at Sheboygan says salmon and walleye, including pink salmon, have moved into the Sheboygan River. The Sands at Petoskey says jumbos is the name of the perch they're having up there right now. Jack Duffy bears that out at Leland. He says fantastic perch fishing all over the place. Down at Fisherman's Corner at Manistee, J-Plugs are catching 20-pounders near shore or in Manistee Lake around the pierheads. 10-inch perch are being caught there, too. Out in the deeper water, the salmon seem to be smaller, 10 and 12-pounders. Down at Grand Sports at Grand Haven, they say salmon, eggs, and alewives are taking fish, lots of different species, perch, salmon off the piers. Maine Sports and Marine in Holland says fishing has been limited. Big kings, according to the people at Shamrock Park down in Berrien Springs, bigger than normal. That's good news. Over at Houghton Lake, the pressure is low, according to Dick Peterson at Chief Sports Shop, for fishing, for hunting, everything. Lots of leaf cover, so we're still a little while away from the main activity. Maine Pier Marina in Oscoda says no heavy runs of salmon yet, although lots of catfish. Harlow's, Joe Harlow says down at Essexville, 4-pounders. That goes for walleye and catfish. Lots of salmon, according to Lakeshore Charters around Port Sanilac. Squirrels have been showing up in good numbers. Geese have been moving into the fields. Breast Bay Marina says the perch fishing is good. Everything else is kind of slow. By the way, it's a fella from down here in Monroe. His name is George Barrett. Take a look at the bear that George got last week up around Lewiston. He dedicated this to his brother, Michael David Barrett. They've been hunting buddies for 5 years. Lost him last year in an unfortunate traffic accident. But this bear is a huge 500-pound plus bear that has special significance to a lot of people. And here's the bear that has a lot of people excited. I think a bear is about the best all-around trophy a person can get. I mean, for you, George, did it give you any excitement?
It sure did. Really, Fred, it was an exciting experience.
Well, I imagine a bear that got, 15 feet away from you?
It was within 15 feet when I finally put the bullet in him.
Boy, your heart must have been pounding like crazy.
It was pounding.
There's no animal in this state that you can hunt that gives a thrill like bear. This bear not only gave George a thrill. Ernie, Randall, the guide from Lewiston, how big is a bear?
It dressed out at 434 pounds.
Dressed out. So
Dressed
live
out.
weight, it would be well over
Approximately
500.
523 pounds, 15%.
The head on this bear is huge. It's going to make the record book, won't it?
Hopefully it'll be in the top 10 of the state for scoring.
So this goes good on your credentials. Why am I excited? Because I get some of this bear meat.
That's right.
Which I think is terrific. Let's roll this cape out here. This is on its way to the taxidermist, which is going to provide another decor in George's house. You can see the fat inside of a bear's hide. Bears have a tremendous amount of fat on them, which is a problem with the meat. But you say that you've cleaned it all up and trimmed
We've
it?
cleaned it all off, cut all the fat out, and he's being prepared for cutting up.
And I get some of that.
You
I'm
definitely
excited.
do, Fred.
Have you had bear meat before?
I
George?
haven't. The first bear I've taken.
Oh, I tell you, it's going to be exciting. Now, you're just married. 6 months wed.
Yes.
Your wife is pretty excited about this
She
bear?
was. I called her the night before, and I'm glad to be married and everything. I got a wonderful wife, a very understanding
But tell me
wife.
what she said.
She said, get it for your brother. That's what you're out there for.
She also said that if she wants some attention this fall, she's going to have to get herself stuffed and send it in the National Enquirer.
You got it.
Well, I tell you, this bear is taking a lot of attention, but I'm sure you'll get back to the family. I can't wait to get some of this bear meat. George,
My pleasure.
congratulations on
Thank
a
you.
bear for the record book. Now we got some news, some poaching news, new poaching news from Bob Garner.
Poachers who are used to getting off with light fines in Michigan aren't going to be quite so lucky this year. The legislature has raised the fines up to even $1,000. You can be charged for taking a deer out of season or possessing one, and $1,000 of liquidated damage. In fact, a rabbit is even $500. I asked the Law Division Chief, Herb Burns, whether he thought this might have an effect overall on poaching.
I would hope so, that people will think twice. And you have to realize that the vast majority of the people that hunt and fish are law-abiding, and we're really focusing on a very small segment of the people that choose to violate the statutes. The sportsmen in general, fishermen, support this type of legislation. And Michigan is not setting the pace by any means. There are a number of states whose their fines and penalties still exceed most of ours.
Wisconsin, I understand, seem to deer hunters seem to be far more successful after Wisconsin instituted some major penalties for poaching.
The initial studies show that they've over doubled their legal deer harvest in 3 or 4 years after having stiffer penalties for shining alone, where the penalties went from the area of $100 to in excess of $1,000. The complaints have also just about diminished to zero in Wisconsin, so we're very hopeful that the same type of reaction will take place in Michigan.
Does that mean that maybe we might take 350,000 or 400,000 deer somewhere down the road?
I would like to think so.
The new law that allows a deer hunter to take an extra buck has caused some confusion around the state. So let's clear it up, especially for those archers before the season begins. The second license entitles the hunter to a legal buck only. That's regardless if it's taken with bow or gun. If an archer shoots a buck first and wishes to tag it with the second tag, he can, and save his original license for further hunting for any sex of deer. Now, the second buck tag for bow is not legal in the Upper Peninsula. And the celebration of National Hunting and Fishing Day takes place this Saturday in Michigan. Governor Blanchard has, through proclamation, declared a hearty thank you to the contributions of hunters and anglers for the large part they've played in conservation and environmental causes. The honorary chairman of the national celebration is all-star third baseman George Brett, who enjoys hunting pheasants and quail with former Kansas City Royals manager Whitey Herzog. Herb Burns, DNR law chief, has ruled that a device called Power Shot is a legal archery device in Michigan. There's been a rumor to the contrary that since Power Shot holds the bowstring at a compound bow's point of drawn weight reduction, that's known as the let-off, that it is illegal. Not true, says Officer Burns, because the Power Shot does not hold the string in a drawn position. The bowstring must be physically taken from Power Shot's arm and drawn further back and released by hand, making it under Michigan law legal.
And here it is, Bob, at long last, the brand new September-October Outdoor Digest. It looks great. Worth waiting for. It should be in everybody's hands by now. Lots of articles in here. Our mailbag question, interesting one. Jim Schultz from Saginaw writes one, I think, for you, Bob. If a fox is after your chickens, can you shoot it out of season?
Absolutely. The law allows you to take a carnivore that's threatening your livestock like that at any time. Now, you must report to a local CO or DNR official that you did, in fact, take that fox.
And you have to turn that animal in,
You have
don't
to
you?
turn it in. You cannot keep the hide, the animal, anything.
Another question here from Jim Schultz, that he heard a rumor that the DNR is going to ban deer scents.
Yeah.
Is that true?
No. Absolutely, unequivocally, no. Nobody wants to ban deer scents. I don't know if they're all that effective all of the time anyway, that they're going to damage our deer herd, but no, there's no movement at all.
Talking about things like doe and heat, this scent right here, there's lots of them on the market. A lot of people swear by them, but we're going to cover this type of thing in our Hunter's Workshop. By the way, also in the digest, we have an article, Hunting Scrapes by Tom Opry. Did you know that a prime age dominant buck might make 100 scrapes in a year?
Which one would you hunt?
That's the question. Also, did you know they can check a scrape from 100 yards away?
Yeah.
These should be quiz questions, which reminds me, let's get to this safety question right now in our outdoor quiz.
Hunting has a national accident rate of about 9 injuries per 100,000 hunters. How does this accident rate compare with baseball? Hunting's 9 accidents per 100,000 hunters is almost nil, compared to baseball's rate of 3,746 injuries per 100,000 players. These statistics are furnished by the National Safety Council.
Stir fry is what we cook up in the wok right here. It just happens to be Bob Garner's favorite. This recipe is called Stir Fry Venison Dinner. Margaret Hart from Glass Bay, Nova Scotia sent us this recipe.
Nova Scotia?
Oh, boy, I tell you, she knows how to cook Chinese food
Would
with
you find another piece of venison?
another piece of venison.
Thank
You've
you.
got it right there. Let me tell you, Margaret has put together a great recipe here, Kathy, which you reconstructed.
It's good.
It is good.
Easy. It's got a lot of ingredients like Chinese dishes do,
Well, look,
but this is easy.
Chinese dishes don't have carrots.
Well, this one does. This is different. And I cut them round rather than diagonal. Going to cut your venison into strips here, and there's no connective tissue, no fat there. It's just good strips of venison. Going to make a marinade out of soy sauce and vinegar and or water. And now we've got oyster flavored sauce here. That's different. It's actually quite thick.
It doesn't smell. I took a whiff of that one before you were cooking that, and it doesn't smell like oysters.
No, it's just got extract in it actually, and then it's got caramel in it. That's what makes it so thick.
It's like a brown gravy sauce.
Uh-huh.
I've never seen it
Absolutely.
before.
Yep. A pinch of ginger and a pinch of garlic powder. Now you actually taste garlic because you almost taste it in the soy sauce too. And just a little bit of pepper. You don't want a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then a teaspoon of sugar. So
That's in the marinade.
Yep, that's just a marinade though. Pieces of meat. And
So
you can
this
let it-
isn't a real hot and spicy marinade. It's
No,
a rather
absolutely
mild
not.
one.
Gonna let this marinate overnight, and you want to stir this pretty good because you want all those pieces to get down in there. In fact, it doesn't hurt to a couple times during overnight to stir it.
And this doesn't taste too salty either, and I know
No.
soy sauce has a lot of salt
Yep.
in it, but this certainly doesn't.
Right. And now you're gonna fry these a few pieces at a time in the wok because you don't want to cool your wok down. You want it to keep hot all the time. Now we're going to add all of our vegetables at one time here. We've got onions and carrots and celery, green and red pepper. And red pepper is actually just green pepper, only it's a little bit older and a little bit sweeter.
Well, it gives it a lot of color.
Oh, most certainly
it
does.
Really looks great.
Yep, and fresh tomatoes, and you can't beat those this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Go let that all cook, and it doesn't take very long. You don't want this to cook down a lot.
Water chestnuts,
right,
pineapple,
and a whole can of mushrooms. And then going to thicken this just a little bit with cornstarch, and it doesn't take much, just a quarter cup of water.
But this isn't real thick.
No.
I mean, somebody could thicken it more if they wanted to.
Well, sure you could, but you don't want to thicken it a whole lot here. It doesn't, like I say, it doesn't take very much at all to thicken that.
Stirred, and here we have it. You know, this wins the award for the best looking recipe,
absolutely.
I think. It is so colorful.
Darn colorful.
Yep.
And if we
Can't beat
take
it.
a look, let's try some of this venison here to see if you think it's only been stir fried, that it's not going to be tender. Or we cut through that, and there it is. Good looking, lean, healthful, tasty meat.
Fried a couple of minutes, and then
Let's
put it in the wok.
get Bob's word here.
But the story is in the vegetable. Take a look at this vegetable.
Yep.
That's colorful. It's crisp. It tastes like a piece of celery.
Not mush.
And the peppers taste like pepper, and they're not mush. And that's what I like about this type of recipe.
Yep.
An excellent dish. An
Very
excellent
good.
dish with a combination, almost like a stew and a stir fry. And
Oh,
a
yeah,
whole
you
bit.
can't beat it. And like I say, this time of year with all the fresh vegetables.
That's our Nova Scotian recipe. Margaret Hart, it was a great one. And something for you to put down on your list of things to try this fall with your venison. But I hope this weekend you can get outdoors. It's a great place to be. And join us right here next week. Way off course. Now let's take a look at that. It wasn't the release, it was a mismatched arrow buckling up in flight. You might not see the problem with your naked eye, but the slow motion shows the distorted arrow. So you have to match your arrows to your bow. Some say they're unpredictable. I don't really think so. Can they duck arrows? Well, maybe. But all that can be explained when we look at white-tailed deer behavior. That's next week's subject on Michigan Outdoors.